freaking first cut. Golly.
Welcome to the First Cut Podcast. I'm Rick Gehman, and this is your DFS preview for this week's Open, which is very, very fun to say. Joining me to break it all down, Greg DuCharme is here. Hello, Greg.
Rick, very happy to be here. Very excited to discuss the final major championship of the year. I can't believe it's the final major of the year already. It's just kind of bittersweet, but it is always exciting, and we're going to a great venue with a great field, the best, as good as it gets. So I'm really looking forward to this one.
Yeah, I always try to remind people right now that we are basically 7 days away from the worst part of the year where you go 260 some odd days before the next major. So as if we weren't going to soak this one in anyway, really, really soak it in, because they go fast when they start, but it is a very long time between now and April.
Yeah. And look, during this is the sweet spot. So it's a lot of fun, and there's a lot to play for. And we're all kind of way in on it at this point. And there's definitely a slowdown coming after this. Of course, we have the FedEx Cup playoffs and President's Cup and things like that to look forward to, which are great. But ultimately, these 4 tournaments are what it's all about. And there's one last shot at glory, which I think was the old saying for the PGA Championship.
That's right. And then it became not the last shot at glory. So they had to retire that
shot at glory.
Exactly. So let's not waste any more time. Let's jump right on into this thing. Troy, if you want to share my screen, we can run through it. I've got my website up, rickrungood.com. And as with most Open championships, Greg, a lot of the storyline is the golf course. And this time we go to Royal Troon. That is where we were in 2016. You probably remember it from the Henrik Stenson, Phil Mickelson duel, where they were lapping the field over everyone. Signature holes. Let's go with the postage stamp, number 8, which is a very, very tiny green and coffin bunkers. 11 will play as probably the most difficult hole potentially of the entire year. But let's start talking about what Royal Troon is, what types of players might be able to find success here, and then we'll get into the field, Greg.
Okay, so first, what Royal Troon is, it's a very interesting test of golf that is kind of divided, and I think it's pretty clear in your in the graphic that you have up on the screen here, Rick, that the front 9, specifically the first 6 holes, are very gettable. The first 3 holes are par 4s that are under 400 yards. You didn't see a whole lot of this in 2016, but you may this year, where players actually are driving the fronts of greens, driving it right up near the green in some cases. I think that's a very real possibility this year. And you have to take advantage of the first 6 holes. So after those par 4s, you have two of the 3 par 5s on the golf course in number 4 and number 6, also on the front 9. That being said, those par 5s are no picnic. They are both over 600 yards. Well, one's 599, one's 623 this year. So they are long par 5s, but they're certainly still scoring opportunities. But then things kind of take a turn. You mentioned the difficulty at number 11.
Yeah.
And you look at this back 9. I mean, just breaking down the scorecard. I mean, on the front 9, you have 5 par 4s. They're all under 440 yards. And number 9 is 440 yards. And so all the previous par 4s are much shorter than that. Well, on the back 9, you have 6 par 4s. They're all over 450 yards. 3 of them are over 470. So it's a really what you're going to see probably on Thursday. And if you're not waking up to watch the first tee shot, there's a very good chance you turn on the TV and you see somebody 5 under par through 8 holes, 6 under through 8. And then all of a sudden their name plummets off the leaderboard because the golf course changes dramatically as you get up into the sand dunes and as you start turning back toward the clubhouse. The test of this golf course gets significantly more difficult. So I think that's a very interesting thing to watch throughout this tournament.
So you've got the ability to get some strokes to par early and then hold on. This is the first time I've done something like this for the correlation model, Greg. So we do have data. There was ShotLink at the 2016 Open Championship. So we do have a little bit of data. What I also did for the first time is I took some other, I was a little bit cautious with this, but I took some other Open Championship Rota setups. I think Royal Troon has its unique aspects to it, obviously, but I did take some other Rota style golf courses to generate almost like a projected correlation model over the normal weeks where we have 10, 12, 15 years worth of data, and I don't have to put my fingerprints on anything at all. And what the model really likes in most majors, this is not unusual, is a very solid ball striking, very good tee to green play. But you always see at Open Championships, you always see around the green play come into it a little bit more. And I think that is because not only of link style golf, not only where you have golf holes with a lot of runoff, but those pot bunkers that protect a lot of the greens and fairways. They really do ask for a lot of creativity, a lot of skill. So anytime you model on Open Championship stuff, around the green play seems to get a fairly significant boost.
Yes, and the other aspect specifically here at Troon, which is different than every course in the Open Rota, specifically St. Andrews, but the greens here are not very large.
Yes,
they may be on the smaller side. And when you're dealing with wind, you're dealing with small greens, you're dealing with penal rough, what happens is a lot of greens are missed. So because you're missing a lot of greens, there's a lot of opportunity to gain or lose strokes around the greens.
Yeah.
The caution I have with around the green play in an Open specifically, very different than a US Open per se, is it's a different style of short game in many cases, right? The pot bunkers, a great bunker player may not be a great bunker player in an Open Championship.
For sure.
You know, when you're chipping from these fairways, you may use a wedge, but you may not. You may be putting off the green a lot. You may be using a more flat face club. You may be using a hybrid or a 5-wood. There are so many different options in the around the green play. It becomes, and I'm not in any way saying it's not important. I just think it becomes a little more difficult to handicap.
Agreed.
When you're typically looking at traditional short games.
Yeah,
So,
they're all very fair to even put just a recent example in that column. I mean, Victor Hovland gained like 4 strokes around the green at St. Andrews, and it was because he pulled putter every single time he missed green.
Right, which is it's an option.
Right.
So I think that it allows for some variance in the type of player. I also think the tee to green stuff leads to some variance in the type of player. You know, oftentimes in Open Championships, you're rewarded for putting the ball in the fairway. Driving accuracy has a tendency of becoming more important than driving distance. That's different at St. Andrews, but it could very well be a factor here, like it was a factor last year at Royal Liverpool.
Right.
So, you know, there are some difficult things to figure out. I think this is one of the most difficult tournaments year over year, regardless of the venue, to handicap and predict. I don't think at this point weather is going to be a huge factor where you're going to have a massive swing in the draw. There may be a slight advantage one way or the other, but I don't think you're going to see a huge advantage based on what I've seen today on Monday. But weather can absolutely play a role. So these things complicate the handicapping procedure. And what I like to do when you're dealing with complicated procedures like this is 2 things. Who's playing well now? That's a really important aspect. And also who has some pedigree in Open Championships on links golf. I think that is a very important aspect because some guys just don't know how to play it. They haven't figured that out yet. Whereas other guys seem to excel in this kind of environment.
Well, let's start naming some names. We will go through this field and find the diamonds in the rough, the obvious ones, the ones that we are more concerned about, and we'll do it all after a quick word from our partners. And we're back. Here is the cheat sheet. And there are 6 golfers over $10,000. I will put in the qualifier as usual that these salaries did get released before the conclusion of the Scottish Open. So keep that in mind. We've got Scotty Scheffler leading the way at 12,800. Bryson DeChambeau at 11.5. Rory McIlroy at 11.4. Xander Schauffele is 11,200. John Rahm is 10.4. Ludwig Oberg is 10.1. It's a major championship, Greg. All the big boys are here, and they're at the top of the board.
Yes. And again, going back to, this is important to consider, going back to Links Golf Acumen, I think it really narrows this down in my mind right now to 2 players.
Okay.
I think there are more that are playable. I just think it's really hard to avoid both of these guys. And that would be Scotty Scheffler and Rory McIlroy. I alluded to the Rory case last night, but Scotty Scheffler, just, I mean, this resume is just incredible. And I can't get over it.
This is a profile. So if I was doing testing on the website, right, and I was just testing data, this is the type of profile that I would load in, right? I want it to look really pretty and like look cool. And I would take a screenshot of this and I would use it for marketing and all that fun stuff. This is his actual stat profile. It is just unbelievably green, tons of wins. It's got just huge exaggerated stats. It's unreal. So this is really, I think, what it comes down to, Greg. And you started doing this. It might have been on Sunday night. I apologize, I don't remember. But you started making the case about how this could be different from Pinehurst. And I think that that's the big question, right? That's the question that people are going to want to know when they click Scotty Scheffler's name for $12,800.
Yeah, I mean, take a look at if you're looking at this data, there's one glaring piece of information that stands out that ruins your marketing material, Rick, and it's losing 6 strokes putting at the U.S. Open. But ever since he went to the mallet putter, which was the Arnold Palmer Invitational, that's the only event he's lost strokes putting in. At Pinehurst, he couldn't read the greens. They were extremely fast. They got a little bumpy, a little crusty at times. They were extremely difficult. And I look at this Open Championship and Open Championships in general, and they tend to be more benign greens, St. Andrews being an exception. But they're a little slower. They're small greens. If you hit a lot of greens, you're going to have a lot of good looks at birdie, and there's not a ton of break in them. And I think that gives someone like Scotty Scheffler a really big advantage in a strange way. Now, his record in Open Championships is not spectacular, but it's certainly not terrible, right? He has 3 starts. They're all top 25s. An 8th, a T21 and 22, and a T23 last year, where he really did struggle on the greens. I still think that the anomaly is what happened at Pinehurst. I think this is a different test on the greens. I think it's one that Scheffler will figure out. So if you're in this, hey, it's really difficult to handicap. I want to get the best ball striker. If you think driving accuracy is really important, if you think short game is important, if you think, like it always is, iron play is important, yeah, Scotty's the guy. And I think he's shown enough putting acumen to keep up if it's a birdie fest. He doesn't 3-putt very often, unless he's at Pinehurst. And so I think there's a really strong case to be made that this tournament belongs to Scotty Scheffler.
I believe that one of the things that indicates green in regulation, which I agree with you, at an Open with small greens, that is more important than most places, is distance control. And Scotty's distance control is second to none. And even if he does miss some greens, he's got the maybe the best short game in the world. And when he gets on the putting surfaces and they're slower than Pinehurst and they're smaller and they're easier to read, yeah, I'm with you. But the other man you mentioned is Rory McIlroy. But Greg, he can't handle the pressure. He coughed it up on Sunday at Pinehurst. We couldn't possibly go back to Rory.
I think you can go back to Rory.
Oh, okay.
It's important, and this is something I'd be doing if I were in Rory's camp. Like, let's go over to rickrungood.com. Okay, Rory.
I'll send him a login if he needs one.
Send him a login. Yeah, get him those promotional codes.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd put a limit on it. I wouldn't let him look forever. But give him a promo code and say, all right, you after the Masters, which is kind of always a turning point for Rory McIlroy. You've basically contended every week. You've won twice. You came in second in the U.S. Open. You came in tied 12th at the PGA Championship. You came in tied 4th at the Scottish Open, and it felt like you had nothing. Right? It felt like a poor play, and it's tied 4th. You should have won that tournament. It's a wild place to be for Rory. Again, I go back to the same thing on the greens. I think that the greens like this benefit someone like Rory McIlroy. His record in the Open is extremely strong. It may surprise you actually how strong it is. Since he won in 2014, he really has figured out links golf. I mean, right after that, it was a T5, a T4, a T2, and he didn't even get a chance to play in 2015 because he was hurt. Maybe that soccer game he played may be the biggest reason why it's been 10 years since he's won a major.
Wow. Could you imagine?
Right? Probably 9 years, but he wasn't there. He came in 3rd in 2022, tied 6th last year. He has figured out how to play major championship golf. And like I said on Sunday, there's just nothing to lose. Whatever happens this week, it's not going to be as bad as Pinehurst. It just can't. It cannot get any worse. So you're either going to be in the same position or you're going to have the best feeling you've had in 10 years. Maybe ever. Probably ever. So I think it's a really interesting place for Rory to be. I think it's a good place for him to be. And I think there's nobody in the field more deserving of a major championship. If you were if the RNA was taking resumes looking for the Open Championship winner, and all you had to do was submit what you've done in the past, and they were finding the most qualified candidate, it would be Rory McIlroy.
I will just put a bow on Rory with this because I do like looking post Masters. So this is everybody in the field since the Masters. Scotty Scheffler's gaining 2.7 strokes per round. Rory's gaining 2.4, second best in the world, and he's done it in 5 more rounds than Scotty has. So it has been, despite the oxygen being spent on telling us how bad Rory McIlroy is, he is very, very good. Okay, let's assume that those two don't exist. How do we rank the other 4, which are DeChambeau, Rahm, Ludwig, and Xander in the top of this range?
Probably Xander, DeChambeau, Rahm. Now, there's a lot of attention on Bryson.
Where does Ludwig go in there? Sorry.
Oh, I think Ludwig would go behind Bryson. Ahead of
Xander, Bryson, Ludwig, Rahm.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I think that's what I would do. Gets a little murky down there, right? I don't like where Jon Rahm's headspace is. I love his record in the Open, which I think is great. But I'm not crazy about his year. And I don't know that that's really gotten any better. I think it's safe to say that his foot is better, which is nice. But his headspace, I don't know yet. So it's probably dangerous to put him last. Bryson has just been playing great golf, but I don't really like his links resume. I think it's a tougher test for him. And if he hits those tee shots like he did at the U.S. Open, where he's missing fairways like that, he's going to have a much more difficult time here at this venue than he did at Pinehurst, where it seemed like there was fortune on his side. That's just not an option here.
T8 is his best Open Championship result. Outside of that, he doesn't have another top 30.
Which is it's a concern for me stylistically. Xander has been great, continues to play great, and is extremely safe for kind of what we've been seeing lately. Top 10, top 15 kind of lock, like T15 at the Scottish Open. He didn't play great, but he's right there. He's won the Scottish Open, contended at Carnoustie. I think he has the stuff to compete in an Open. But Open championships for him through his career have been kind of that. It's almost like a low end Xander performance. T15, T13, T18, that, kind of finishes like that. I think it's very likely we get that at the worst. And there's a chance that if he plays well, he will finish top 5, no problem.
There is, as you can imagine, a very stout 9K range in this field. It starts with Colin Morikawa, Victor Hovland, Tyrrell Hatton, and then it goes to Tommy Fleetwood, Patrick Cantlay, and Brooks Koepka. Not without some interesting names here, Greg. What do we like and what are we staying away from?
This is a fascinating range,
the
9K range. So Colin Morikawa, I find it impossible to ignore. So he's probably the top choice. If you go with Scheffler and you get kind of pinched out on Colin, I understand that. Although you can, with a 5K range, you can definitely get both in there.
Colin has Scotty's profile, but just in half the amount of time.
Yes, and if you look, past the finishing position, it looks a lot like that. We just don't have any ones there yet.
Right.
But you know how I feel about that. I mean, this often means that there's a 1 coming.
Right.
You put a 1 on the end of it, and this has been what an incredible run. Of course, this happened.
Yeah, we should have all
really
seen
impressed with this putter.
Oh my God, I was impressed with how he was so stoic and so confident and so locked in for 63 holes last week. And you called it perfect. He had that one double cross or whatever it was, and he just got the Monstars came and took all his talent. You know what I mean? It was so weird. It was so weird. He got spooked and just could not finish that event off.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of concern there for me, but I do think they'll get that straightened out. You finish the round, you evaluate what happened. I don't think there's a better coach suited to handle a situation like that than Rick Sessinghouse. So I do think he'll come back ready to compete in this Open. So I would let those concerns slip away. This has been an incredible run, and he's hard to ignore. Unless you don't think he can play in the wind, because we're going to have some wind.
I've given up on that. I think he can play in wind. Well, okay. So the way that I think this breaks down is I think you're going to get a ton of people clicking Colin Morikawa, Tyrrell Hatton, Tommy Fleetwood, and then they are going to have no idea what to do with Victor Hovland, Patrick Cantlay, Brooks Koepka.
All right. So I think Patrick Cantlay is actually a very strong play. And ownership aside, I like where Patrick Cantlay is. He's kind of quietly, he very quietly finished tied 3rd at the U.S. Open. And because of what happened with Rory and because Bryson won, Patrick Cantlay was forgotten. He almost won that tournament. Very late in the back 9, had a chance to win that tournament. And then answered with the T5 at the Travelers and has taken a couple weeks off. And I think he comes in ready to go. He's played okay in links golf as well. It hasn't been spectacular, but he does have a T8 in 2022, T33 last year. He came and tied 12th at Carnoustie as well. So I think Patrick Cantlay is a wonderful play. It seems like we're seeing like the real Patrick Cantlay back now.
This is the cheapest he's been in about 18 months, and he's coming off his best 2 starts of the calendar year. Okay, so a little bit of confidence in Cantlay. You have any confidence in either Koepka or Hovland, or are we just going to avoid those 2?
No, I'm avoiding both of them. I'm avoiding both of them. I think Hatton's very playable. Very, very playable. If he draws up too much attention, I understand. And in that case, I would pivot to Patrick Cantlay, which I may do anyway. But I think Tyrrell Hatton has shown that he has what it takes to compete in majors. He came in tied 5th here back in 2016 and is having a great year. He just won on the Live Tour in late June. The U.S. Open, he played very well with the exception of a horrible putting performance on Sunday.
Yeah.
And so I think Hatton is a really strong play. I think Fleetwood's a safe play. If there's a lot of ownership around him, I'm happy to pass.
Well, it'll be interesting because I think that those three, Morikawa, Hatton, and Fleetwood, I don't think you can play them all unless you start in the 9K range, which I don't think people are going to want to do with the 6 guys at the top. So there is going to be one of those three that you're going to have a little bit of a discount on. Hatton is trending to be the most popular one and done selection. And that usually translates pretty well for DFS purposes, although there is obviously the fact that he's a live golfer and this is the last chance that you get to use him. But I think that Tyrrell Hatton's name will be on the top of a lot of people's minds. We'll see as the week goes on what those projected ownership numbers are. And then the 8K range here, Greg, slightly bigger. And I think these are guys that are actually coming in good form, flying under the radar a little bit. Cam Smith, Tony Finau, Hideki Matsuyama, Tom Kim, Shane Lowry, Matt Fitzpatrick, Wyndham Clark. Where do you want to start?
Yeah, some really good options here. And I'd like to start with Tony Finau at 700. Right. I mean, he has also quietly been just phenomenal.
I'm ready, Greg. You've been prepping me for months for this moment, and I'm ready. It is Finau time.
He's taken a long time to get to a place that I thought he was heading very early on in the year. He was close, but it seems now like he's starting to put it together. He's made an adjustment with his putter on the greens, the grip and the way that he holds it and how level the putter is now. And it's so much better and it's paying off in growing fashion. And it's led to T8 at the Memorial, T3 at the U.S. Open, T5 at the Travelers. And he could play in Opens too. He played great at Royal Portrush back in 2018. He played really nice in 2021 at St. Andrews as well. He's got a T9 in 2018 at Carnoustie. He has what it takes to play in these kind of events. I don't think that the links acumen is in question with Tony Finau. So looking at what he's done recently, sign me up on Tony.
Yeah, I've got the star. On him because I agree with you. The putter has been much, much better. And that was the one thing that was really holding him back. So we are ready to rock and roll. I want to pull up Cam Smith's profile here. I think that Cam Smith, actually, I know Cam Smith was quite popular for the US Open this year. I think people thought, okay, well, he's not really playing all that great, but maybe short game is going to be important at Pinehurst. He ends up finishing T32, just kind of an average, maybe below average finish. But I actually think this might be the better setup for him. He's hitting it a little bit better. The results are coming in on Live. It's just one major championship later than everybody thought. I think this is a more interesting time to run out Cam Smith.
Yeah, I understand that for sure. I wouldn't criticize you for playing him this week. I worry personally about his driving accuracy. I think there are some venues where you get away with that. I don't think you get away with it at a venue like this. St. Andrews is the Open Championship that he won, and he played great, and the fairways are gaping wide. But other than that, his best finish is a T20. He's got a couple of other top 35s, but it's not like this is a stellar Open Championship resume. So I think given that it's St. Andrews and very different than other links courses in the Rota, his links golf proficiency may be, at least the perception of it, is a little higher than it actually is. So I have my concerns with Cam Smith.
Where else in this 9K range, or excuse me, 8K range would you prefer to go?
Tom Kim. Tom Kim is definitely a player. I got Tom Kim and one other guy. Okay. So Tom Kim's been driving the ball great. Yeah. I don't think distance is a huge factor here in Open Championships. He shot a great round on Sunday. at the Scottish Open to put up a very respectable T15 finish. It was disappointing if you're like me and you haven't been one and done. But ultimately, I think it was a pretty solid performance out of him. The ball striking has been great. I rule out the Rocket Mortgage. I think he just played too much golf. I think he's rested now and ready to go. And, a kind of a rising star on the links. He really is. T2 last year in the Open Championship. Great record at the Scottish Open as well. I think we're in for a good Tom Kim week.
He's made 5 cuts in a row at major championships, all of them inside the top 30. 5 top 30s in his last 6 majors. The only place he missed the cut was when he jumped into the mud at the PGA Championship. That was there, right?
It's Southern Hills.
Was it Southern Hills? I thought it was Oak Hill.
Was it Oak Hill? It might have been Oak Hill.
I think it was Oak Hill because I think I was in the media center when he did it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so that would make more sense.
Yeah, that's the only place he missed the cut.
Yeah.
No, you're right. He has a low-key, very good links history, very good majors history, and he is much better now than he was when he started off 2024 in kind of a wonky fashion. Who was the other guy? Tom Kim and one other.
Yeah, Wyndham Clark.
I thought it might be Wyndham. The back-to-back top 10s.
Yeah, and the price. I mean, look, you could argue, and I would hear you out, that he has the same issue as Cam Smith with inaccuracy off the tee. But I could see Wyndham Clark going to a very reliable 290-yard stinger with a long iron all week long. And I could see that working very well for him. I think he is too talented to be $8,000 flat, especially coming off of 2 top 10s back-to-back, one of them being at the Scottish Open in links golf. So I'm very impressed with Wyndham. Very impressed with his putting performance in general and lately. If you look at what he's done in Opens, he has a T33, a T76. He's putted terribly in both 2022 and 2023. I'm wondering if he figured something out last week, gaining over 6.5 strokes on the greens. I think it could be a sneaky play to get Wyndham Clark in there.
Wyndham Clark, $8,000. Rare. It has been rare to get him at that price over the course of the past couple of years since he started winning at a more frequent clip. We're going to continue this conversation. We got to get to the 7s and below, but first we're going to take a quick break and hear a word from our partners.
We need your sports news anywhere.
We've got breaking news to bring you.
Then get your sports anytime you want them. Big trade news overnight to discuss.
Because we know you need sports all the time.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
A legend adds to their legacy.
We're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
CBS Sports HQ, anywhere, anytime, all the time.
And we're back. The $7,000 range. Oh, mama. At the top, Jordan Spieth, Joaquin Niemann, Robert McIntyre. The middle of the range, that's your Cam Young, Justin Thomas. And then the bottom of this range is Akshay Bhatia, Matthew Pavone. I will also note the 3 late adds to this field I've just added them to the website. They are in now. Aaron Rye is 7,300. Alex Noren is 7,200. And who was the third one? Romain Langask? Or was he already in?
I thought he was already in.
Oh man, now I got to look it up. Sorry, I'm derailing us. Mansell, Richard Mansell. That's right. He shot shot the course record on Sunday. He is $5,900. So there you go. What do you want to do in the 7K range, Greg?
I like the 7K range. I think there's some good options here. I think we got to start with Cam Young. Cam Young has shown an incredible proficiency to compete in majors. We know that. He's competed in PGA championships. He's competed in Masters. He's competed in U.S. Opens. He's competed in the Open Championship as well, nearly winning at St. Andrews. And I know this is a very different test than St. Andrews, but it's also really important to note that he came in tied 8th last year at Royal Liverpool. Very different test than St. Andrews. Last year wasn't a great year for him, and he still figured out how to play well. But this time he's coming off a T9 at the Travelers, a T6 at the Rocket Mortgage Classic. He's hitting the ball great. and seems to have the putter in a more, understandable spot, a spot with a little more potential. So I love what I'm seeing from Cam Young, and to get somebody with the kind of firepower that he has at 7,500, I think is just a great deal.
Yeah, he's done a nice job of righting the ship this year. So I'll be interested to see what he does. I think that he's laying a couple breadcrumbs down. I'm interested. I'm interested cautiously. What else do we do here?
I'm also interested. Well, I think Aaron Rye is still playable for all the same reasons that we mentioned last week. Even talked about it on Sunday. Plays such a steady game. He's coming in off of 3 top 10s, 5 straight top 20 finishes. Aaron Rye could very well play a factor in this tournament.
Look at the putting numbers, Greg. He's gained 3, 4.5, 9, and 5.7 in his last 4.
Yeah, and this is all after switching coaches, right? So there's like a significant reason why this happened. And I don't see any reason why it would stop now. He's so deliberate and he is very understanding of what it takes to make something work. I think that bodes really well for Aaron Rye. So he's one for sure. The other that may be more surprising, Rick, is Corey Connors.
Okay.
So Corey Connors sounds safe. You may feel like you never get anything out of him, but it's been very consistent tee to green, as it always is. And you're starting to see a couple of pop-up events where he really putts well. Like at the Canadian Open, he putted great. At the U.S. Open, he putted great. And last week at the Scottish Open, he putted great as well. I think his style of play, being the plotter that he is, could really play well here at Royal Troon.
Yeah, even any of these, go gain 2 strokes with the putter, and I'll take my chances for the rest of Corey Connors' game. And then you've got, we don't need to spend any oxygen on it, but Max Homa, $7,300, just gonna need to see anything out of him. As we continue to go down this list, though, you've got guys like that, Homa, Zalatoris, Dustin Johnson, who are probably historically low priced, alongside guys headed in the opposite direction, Sepp Straka, Akshay Bhatia, and we'll get to Davis Thompson in a second. He's 6,900.
Yeah, the Zalatoris and DJ scenario is I can't get behind. There's a reason they're priced this low.
Yeah,
it's been bad. It's been really bad. So I'm staying away there. Sepp Straka, I'm interested in, even though since the Memorial, it's kind of cooled off for him. But I don't think it's cooled off in a bad way, where he's lost something. I think he keeps it simple enough. I think he's ready to go contend in major championships. He came and tied second in the Open Championship last year, and I think he could go do it again this year. So Sepp's definitely on my radar. But who I'm really fascinated with, who I think is very underpriced, is Akshay Bhatia. 1,000.
I have a star next to his name, Greg.
Yeah, sign me up. Look, the guy at T22 at the Memorial, T16 at the U.S. Open, T5 at the Travelers, T2 at the Rocket Mortgage Classic. And for one of the younger players, he's obviously extremely young, but you think of the young guys being bombers. He's not short. He's not a bomber. He's extremely accurate off the tee. It makes him a great driver of the golf ball. He is a shot maker with his irons, especially. He can flight it low with the best of them. He can hit it high. He can work it both ways. He's got shots that you need in major championships. And what he's done with the putter in the last 3 weeks, well, that's been a huge difference maker for him.
+2, +4.5, +3.8. I agree with you. What's the guy got to do? He's $7,000. He is priced. So we've got Akshay, who's got 4 straight top 25s. He's won this year, cheaper than Will Zalatoris, who hasn't mustered a top 40 in 4 months. I understand there's a pedigree difference, but come on.
So I think Akshay is heading in the direction of that kind of pedigree. And one day I think you'll see him never price this low again. So it's a steal in my opinion on Akshay.
Let's roll on. $6,000 range. The top, the $6,900 golfers, those are Davis Thompson, Jason Day, Justin Rose, Sung Jae Im. The $6,500 golfers, the middle, Adrian Meronk, Billy Horschel, Jordan Smith, Rasmus Højgaard, Tom McKibben. The $6,000 even golfers, Romain Langasque, Padraig Harrington, Maverick McNeely, Matthew Southgate, Lucas Glover, Emiliano Grillo. I wasn't going to name them all. I did.
Yeah.
All right. What do you want to do here, Greg?
Well, Sung Jae.
Unbelievable.
Sung Jae, $6,900.
$6,900, 3 straight top 12s, 5 in his last 6, 6 in his last 8. Any issues? 7 of his last 10 top 12 finishes. The three that have not been, have all been missed cuts, Greg, and they've all been major championships.
It's a concern. It's absolutely a concern. A buddy of mine was sending me his lineups. He's in this contest with his buddies.
Collusion.
At the U.S. Open, he's got Sung Jae. I'm like, I don't know. I wasn't really all that in on Sung Jae at this time. And then Sung Jae is playing really poor. He's like, Sung Jae has just such a capacity to play absolutely terrible anytime I play him. So I had a little laugh about that. He did finish T20 in the Open last year. The major resume is not as strong as his non-major resume. I think there's absolutely reason for concern there. But this is really hard to ignore for me because it's the Sung Jae way. You're starting to see the ball striking really come back into form. And if you look before the U.S. Open, Rick, I mean, he wasn't really gaining strokes proficiently with his iron play at all. I think he was doing a lot of the work in the good weeks on and around the greens. And that test, it just puts more and more pressure on your short game and your putting if you're not hitting it well in majors. And right now, Sung Jae's hitting the ball a lot better. So I do think there's a difference between what we've seen over the last 3 starts for Sung Jae and what we saw heading into the 3 majors that he missed the cut in. So I think this is the major for Sung Jae to turn it around and at least make the cut.
I've been tracking salaries for the last 6 years, and I only have one instance of Sung Jae being cheaper than he is right now. That was the 2018 PGA Championship. He was $6,500. He was a full-time Korn Ferry player at the time.
Yeah. And he's coming in on this kind of form. Very surprising. Maybe they know something we don't, but I'm probably going to play him. If it's a trap, I'm walking right into it because I love what I'm seeing.
You get a couple of guys who played well last week before the salaries came out. Louis Oosthuizen in T4 at Live Golf Andalusia. Adam Scott nearly gets himself into a playoff and finishes runner-up at the Genesis Open. I'm just throwing some bait here. You don't have to take it, but where else we headed in the 6K range?
Yeah, I do think Louis is interesting and playable, but I'm much more interested at the same price in Siwoo Kim, who has been, I think, quite good lately. He hasn't popped off and given us some real contention of late, but he's been very steady. He's been very consistent. He's played well at the Open in 2022. He came in tied 15th. Really his best Open Championship performance. But I think there's a good chance we get a pretty good Siwoo this week as well.
Yeah, here's Louis' profile just to show it. He withdrew from Houston, Live Golf Houston, but other than that, he's put together a lot of really good performances. Hasn't won. A lot of 3 runner-up finishes this year, no wins. That is vintage Louis Oosthuizen.
You take a runner-up this week, that's for sure.
For sure. I mean, for any of these guys at this price, then you start to get into that mix of, are they DP World Tour players? Are they PGA Tour players? You've got Tom Hoge at 6,400, Tom McKibben, who I'm ready to go right back to at 65. Anybody else tickling your fancy here in the kind of the bottom part of the 6K range?
Yeah, I think Tom McKibben's a good call. You can go right back to him. I also like Rasmus Højgaard quite a bit. He finished T21 at the Scottish Open last week. Has been hitting the ball great on the DP World Tour, and maybe he's headed for the PGA Tour to join his brother. But he has looked very good lately and a really strong performance. He did beat his brother Nikolai, who's a little more expensive last week. So I think you're going to see a good performance out of Rasmus. And then I also think, Rick, all the way down here near the bottom of this range is Romain Langasque. I think he's at 6,000 flat. I mean, he's a great play. He has put together some really strong performances. He played obviously unbelievable golf last week at the Scottish Open with a great Sunday. But I really think that he's just a really talented player who's playing some very good golf right now, who's made 3 out of 4 cuts in the Open Championship and came and tied 33rd last year. So I also think he's improving. I think
the one takeaway is that third place finish at the Scottish was not a huge outlier. I mean, he plays a lot of great golf. He finished T9 the week before that, the BMW International Open. He's got a couple other top 5 finishes on the DP World Tour this year. He's an accomplished player. We just don't see him on the PGA Tour, but once or twice a year, maybe he gets himself into a major championship or so. But he's a very, very talented player, and he's playing great right now. So I agree with you. The $6,000 range, instead of taking a chance on Padraig Harrington, who's kind of beaten up on the old guys on the senior tour, I think I'd prefer Langasque, who's doing it on a bigger stage.
Right. Or Tiger Woods or Phil Mickelson, right? I mean, Henrik Stenson, these guys are all priced higher than him.
We are, I joke that we're contractually obligated to talk about Tiger anytime he's in the field.
Doesn't happen often.
I don't want anything to do with this.
I don't either. I will say, just to make it worth talking about, I have always long thought that the Open Championship was the best venue for Tiger to compete in a major championship. I don't think this one is all that different. It's not particularly hilly. It's not particularly long. He knows how to play links golf. It's a thinking man's golf. But ultimately, I just think it's too hard for him to hold on to over the course of 4 rounds. But it wouldn't surprise me if you saw Tiger get off to a great start Thursday.
Yeah, I think that's the most likely scenario, in my opinion, is Tiger gets inside the top 20 on Thursday. On Friday, he makes the cut by a shot, and then he ends up finishing last of the guys who made the cut. That is like the most likely scenario.
Yeah, sadly, because we've seen it before, right? It's not a deterioration of his skill set,
right?
It's a deterioration of the body.
Correct.
It just doesn't last. So yeah, that's disappointing. Hopefully we catch lightning in a bottle. I'll watch it, but I'm not putting him in my fantasy lineup. That's for sure.
The $5,000 range. Take your pick from Ben Griffin, Brendan Todd, John Catlin at the top. The middle, Jorge Campillo, Sean Crocker, and Zach Johnson, $5,500. Min price. Who do we got down here? Todd Hamilton, Justin Leonard, John Daly. Those are some familiar names down at the absolute bottom. $5,000.
Yeah, Todd Hamilton and Justin Leonard, both winners here at Royal Troon.
I actually have. Let's see what Todd Hamilton has been up to. I can't imagine he's playing.
No.
Yeah. Okay. He's played the last 2 senior PGA championships. He's missed the cut in both of them.
He's not making it into the lineup.
That's what he's been up to.
This 5K range has some legitimate players, right? I mean, Mackenzie Hughes is in here. Nick Taylor's in here. These are legitimate players. The first player that caught my attention was Matthew Jordan.
That was a good call. That was a good call on him last week.
T26 for him. He's been hitting the ball great. So a lot of those same reasons. He actually didn't even hit the ball as well as he has been last week, but saved it with some really good short game, really good putting. Could be another sign to come. But I think he's played some very good golf. I think there's a very good chance it continues. He also came in tied 10th last year at the Open Championship.
I remember that.
So yeah, he's a 5K option. I think there's a couple other, maybe there's stretches, but let's see. Oh, here we go. At 5,500, Sean Crocker.
Okay.
Caught my attention a little bit. He finished tied 3rd at the Italian Open, tied 20th at the BMW International PGA, and actually tied 21st at the KLM Open. He did miss the cut at the Scottish, but he lost 8.5 strokes putting. And so if you're thinking there's going to be a turnaround, I think other than that, his game is warranted a very real possibility of him making the cut. At 5,500, that's all you can ask for.
I got a guy.
Okay.
5,400, Matteo Montecero.
Yes, he's on my list too. He was my 3rd guy in the 5K range.
9 strokes on approach last week, finished T15. Has 2 top 10s in his last 3 starts on the European Tour. He's actually got 4 top 25s in his last 5 starts on the European Tour. He won in March. He's having a great year. He is knocking the cover off the golf ball.
Yeah, I was following him this week because we talked about him on this show last week. I think he's in the 5K range last week as well.
He was 5,700.
5,700, right? And all of a sudden, it pays off. T15. He was on the first page of the leaderboard on Sunday.
He was
early in the day. He was in like the 3rd to last group. So
50,
yeah, run it back.
5,400. Run it back. I will just take. I mean, listen, if you want to go out and finish T8, that's fine. But I will accept a T23 from you, Matteo.
Oh, okay. I'll give him even a little more slack. I'll accept the T32.
Okay, yeah, both would be fine. That he might be, however, I might, if I was desperate, go down to Jesper Svensson, the other Svensson, at 5,300. But I believe that Matteo is probably the lowest I'll go.
Absolutely. And I'm not even sure that I'll go that low. I mean, I could make Matthew Jordan might be the lowest that I go at 58. But at the same time, Matteo and Matthew Jordan are, I think, pretty. It's not like Matthew Jordan's a much better player than Montecero. I could argue that their prices should be flipped, whatever you want to call it. Flip-flopped.
Any chance I can take a look at John Daly's profile, I will take advantage of that. So he's in the field. Here's what that looks like. It is very, very red.
Yep, he's losing strokes.
All right, Greg. Anything else, bud?
I don't think I have anything else. I guess, look, keep an eye on the weather. It's always an important thing. And I have a little weather report, what I was looking at earlier today. There is perhaps a early advantage. It looks like the winds are going to be pretty similar throughout the day on Thursday. South winds 12 to 20 miles an hour. The 20, those are kind of your gusts. Looks pretty similar throughout the day. For at least when most of the players will be on the golf course. Friday, the winds in the afternoon look like they could really pick up and get quite gusty, up to 30 miles an hour in the afternoon. So that's something to watch as we get closer.
Are they still projecting rain?
If you look on weather.com, it does say rain, like 50% chance of rain kind of throughout the week. But if you look on Wind Finder, who I know you like that website, I do too.
Yeah.
It kind of has very small amounts of rain in very small windows that don't really seem to be during the playing hours. So something to keep an eye on. It does look like it'll be cloudy, but it doesn't look like it's going to really rain much when they're playing. But I don't think it's going to be a firm and fast golf course.
Do you know sometimes when they say it's a 50% chance of rain, sometimes that means there's a 50% chance of rain where you are, like a 50% likelihood, or it means that it is going to rain in 50% of the forecasted area?
I did not know that.
Yeah, it's really once I learned that, I don't know what I don't know what the percentages mean anymore. It's
How
weird.
did you learn that?
Somebody like told me and then I looked it up. So chance of precipitation.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. It stinks.
That is horrible news.
I know. So yeah, I guess there's different ways to do it, but the indicated area gets kind of split up in terms of the likely, or is it going to rain in what percentage of the indicated area?
So if you're in New York City and you get a 50% chance of rain,
Yeah.
means uptown, it's going to rain. Downtown, it's not.
In theory. Yeah.
Half of Midtown's good, half of Midtown's out. No rain.
Yes.
Fascinated. Changes everything.
So there is a different meteorology analytic. Are there weather analytics, like people doing YouTube videos of like, well, they nailed it again in Southern California?
There should be. He's the best meteorologist in the country.
There's something called probability of precipitation, which I believe that is closer to like.
That's what you think that it is.
Yeah, I think so.
It might rain, it might not.
Yeah, but chance of rain, I think I don't know, man, but it's weird, and I don't like it.
I don't even know if I might just pretend that never happened.
Just wipe that from your brain.
I never look at the weather in my area.
Neither do I.
Where I live.
You should, though. You get different weather.
I know, but it doesn't change what I do.
What if you need an umbrella?
I don't.
I don't.
Yeah, I don't need an umbrella. If I'm playing golf, which is rare, I may check. Not always, may. If I'm looking at a tournament like this, I will look at the weather in Scotland, but I don't look at the weather in Connecticut. Really, less than 3 times a year, I'll look at the weather.
If you go to my Weather Underground or whatever, all my recents are just, it's like Silvis, Illinois.
PGA Tour schedule.
And I guess if you're never going to take an umbrella, you're never going to be surprised by an outlier temperature day. Like it's not going to go from 80 to -2. You're going to gradually, you can feel it's getting colder.
Yeah. And I do wear, like the studio I work in is very cold. So even in the middle of summer, I'm wearing a quarter zip. And in the dead of winter, it's freezing cold. I'm wearing a quarter zip anyway, because I just got to get in the car, drive there, go in. And then at that point, if I go outside after work, well, I'm outside. I know what it is. So I'll go put a different coat on or peel a layer, So I never have a need to look.
If you need to know the weather, just go outside. You'll just find out.
Best way to tell.
We will be back, believe it or not, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, twice on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday for all your Open Championship needs. For now, big thanks to producer Troy, who does all the hard work behind the scenes. That right there is Greg DuCharme. You can find him on Twitter at The Real GFD, and you can find me at Rick Run Good. This has been The First Cut. We'll catch you next time.